There comes a point in every person's life where silence becomes more powerful than anything you could ever say. A moment where your strength is not measured by how loudly you speak, but by how fiercely you protect your peace. And today, I want to talk to you about a discipline that can transform your identity, restore your dignity, and elevate your entire future. It's called no contact, and if you master it, you master yourself. Most people think no contact is about walking away from someone who hurt you, but that's only the surface. The real truth is this: no contact is a declaration to the universe that you are choosing yourself. It is a commitment to stop negotiating your worth with people who never deserved a seat at your table in the first place. Let me tell you something powerful. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is strength. Silence is you telling your past, you no longer control my future. When you break no contact, you're not reaching out to them. You're reaching back into the pain you fought so hard to leave. Every message, every call, every moment you let them back into your world is you reopening a wound that was finally beginning to heal. Think of your life like a house. Every time you let toxic people slip back in, you're allowing them to graffiti your walls, steal your energy, and rearrange the furniture in your mind. You cannot build a new life with the same people who broke the old one. You can't heal in the environment that made you sick. And you absolutely cannot grow by shrinking yourself to fit back into the same cage you fought to escape. No contact isn't just emotional discipline, it's emotional liberation. There will be moments when you feel the urge to break it. Nights where loneliness feels louder than logic. Days where memories sneak back in. Hours where you question if you made the right decision. And in those moments, I want you to remember this truth. Your future will never look like your past unless you go back there. The mind loves patterns. And toxic relationships create some of the strongest patterns of all. Patterns of validation, chaos, trauma, and hope mixed with pain. That's why leaving feels like withdrawal. That's why staying silent feels unnatural. Not because you need them, but because your brain got addicted to the cycle. But that cycle ends today. It ends the moment you realize you deserve more. It ends the moment you decide that the silence you hold is more powerful than the words you once begged to hear. Let me ask you something important. How many times did you break yourself for someone who wouldn't bend for you? How many nights did you cry for someone who never lost a minute of sleep over you? How many chances did you give to someone who treated your heart like a backup plan? That ends now. You've given enough. You've tried enough. You've sacrificed enough. No contact is how you reclaim the parts of you they never deserved. It's not about punishing them. It's about healing you. It's about rewriting the story. You're not the person who waits by the phone anymore. You're not the person who tolerates disrespect as long as it comes with moments of affection. You're not the person who allows inconsistency to masquerade as love. You are building a new standard for your life. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers, full of self-respect, full of possibility, full of clarity, full of a new identity forming inside you. Every day you stay silent, you grow. Every day you don't respond, you rise. Every day you choose yourself, you become stronger than the day before. Because the truth is, you can't hear your inner voice when you're drowning in the noise of someone else's chaos. You can't find your power when you're tangled in someone else's dysfunction. You can't see your value when your energy is consumed trying to prove it to someone who never appreciated it. Listen carefully. No contact brings back your power because it brings back your focus. Focus on your healing. Focus on your peace. Focus on your future. Focus on your growth. Focus on becoming the person you were meant to be before hurt, heartbreak, and toxicity blurred your vision. And yes, this road will test you. Healing will test you. Growth will test you. Silence will test you. But the most powerful version of you is on the other side of that test. The moment you hold the boundary, your entire life begins to shift. The energy you once wasted trying to fix someone else starts flowing into your dreams, your goals, your confidence, your evolution. You start to remember who you were before the pain. You start to rebuild the muscle of self-worth. You start to think clearly again. You start to breathe again. And one day, not today, not tomorrow, but someday, you will look back and say, breaking no contact would have been the biggest mistake of my life. Staying silent saved me. Because silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is communication. It communicates that you have standards now. It communicates that self-love is your new priority. It communicates that your heart is no longer available to those who mishandled it. You are not running away. You are rising. You are not hiding, you are healing. You are not ignoring them, you are honoring yourself. So when the urge comes to break no contact, breathe. When the memories come, breathe. When the loneliness hits, breathe. When your heart tries to bargain, breathe, breathe, and remind yourself, if someone truly valued you, you wouldn't need to chase them. If someone truly loved you, you wouldn't need to remind them how to treat you. If someone truly cared, you would feel safe, not shattered. Silence protects you from repeating the past. Silence rebuilds you. Silence reconnects you to your power. Silence rewrites your destiny. You are not losing anything by walking away. You're gaining everything you were meant to become. No contact is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of your comeback. Stay silent, stay strong, stay focused, and never, ever break no contact. Your future is worth more than your past, and your peace is worth more than their presence. Silence is a declaration of self-respect, and the moment you understand, your entire relationship with yourself and others begins to transform. Silence isn't just the absence of speaking, it's the presence of power. It's the discipline of choosing not to respond when your emotions demand reaction. It's the mastery of your inner world when the outer world tries to shake you. Silence becomes a mirror that reveals who you are, what you value, and what you refuse to tolerate anymore. When you choose silence not out of fear but out of strength, you step into a higher version of yourself. One that doesn't need validation, doesn't need approval, doesn't need to chase, and doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. This kind of silence is not passive, it's intentional. It's a firm boundary that communicates more clearly than any words ever could. Choosing silence in moments of conflict or manipulation is one of the highest forms of self-respect, because it shows that you no longer allow other people to dictate your emotional responses. You're not giving them access to your energy, your peace, or your attention. You're not giving them the satisfaction of pulling you into the same cycles that used to drain you. You're communicating a powerful message. I value myself too much to participate in anything that diminishes my worth. And even though silence may feel uncomfortable at first, it becomes a shield that protects your growth. You begin to realize that your silence is not a weakness. It's a filter that removes anyone who cannot rise to meet your standards. People who truly respect you will understand your boundaries. People who don't will expose themselves when they can no longer control your reactions. This kind of silence also teaches you emotional clarity. When you stop rushing to respond, you give yourself space to observe your own thoughts without being influenced by pressure, guilt, or manipulation. You start to see situations for what they truly are instead of what someone wants you to believe. You begin to notice patterns in how people treat you, patterns in how you've allowed yourself to react, and patterns in the emotional traps that used to catch you. Silence allows you to detach enough to see the truth. It removes the fog created by emotional chaos. It helps you break the cycle of reacting impulsively and regretting it later. And slowly, your silence becomes your strength because it reminds you that you are in control of yourself. True self-respect begins the moment you stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. It begins when you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. It begins when you stop begging for the bare minimum from those who refuse to give it. Silence becomes your answer when you finally understand that your energy is precious. You start treating your attention like currency, giving it only to people and situations that actually deserve it. When you no longer feel the need to defend your worth, your silence becomes your proof that you know your value. It becomes the most refined response you can give because you're no longer trying to win anyone over. You're simply standing in your truth without needing external confirmation. When you remain silent in moments of disrespect, chaos, or manipulation, you're reclaiming control over your emotional state. You're refusing to let others dictate how you feel. You're refusing to let their behavior pull you into frustration, anxiety, or confusion. This kind of silence is self-care. It's the emotional distance that allows you to rise instead of react. It's a reminder to yourself that peace matters more than proving a point. And when people realize they no longer have access to your reactions, their power over you disappears. They can no longer use your emotions against you. They can no longer draw energy from your responses. They can no longer shake your stability. You become untouchable because your silence protects you from falling back into old patterns. Silence becomes a declaration of self-worth when you no longer tolerate situations that diminish your emotional well-being. You begin to show the world that your time, your peace, and your heart are not available to those who do not value them. You begin to treat yourself with the respect you wished others had shown you, and as you continue choosing silence over chaos, you elevate your standards. You start saying no without guilt. You start walking away without explanation. You start prioritizing your mental and emotional health without hesitating. And with each silent step you take away from what harms you, you take a step toward who you are meant to become. This silence also creates space for self-reflection. It helps you reconnect with yourself without outside noise shaping your thoughts. You begin to hear your inner voice again. The voice that knows when something feels wrong. The voice that warns you when you're compromising your values. The voice that encourages you to choose what aligns with your soul. When you stop speaking just to fill the void, you allow your intuition to become louder. You start recognizing your needs, your flaws, your strengths, and your boundaries. And as your self-awareness grows, your self-respect grows with it because you're finally seeing yourself clearly. The power of silence also teaches you emotional independence. You stop looking to others for closure, reassurance, or validation. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop relying on someone else to give you what you must give yourself. You realize that not every situation needs a confrontation, not every betrayal needs a reaction, not every lie needs correction, not every insult needs a defense. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly and let your silence speak for you. And when you reach this level of emotional independence, you start to feel a sense of freedom that you may have never experienced before. Silence, when rooted in self-respect, becomes a form of emotional discipline. You're teaching yourself that you don't need to respond to everything that disturbs you. You don't need to react to every negative emotion. You don't need to involve yourself in every conflict. You are learning that peace is a choice, and silence is one of the tools that protects it. You begin to appreciate the calm that comes from not engaging in unnecessary battles. You begin to recognize how much energy you save by not trying to change people who don't want to change. And that emotional discipline becomes part of your identity. Your silence becomes a statement of your standards. It shows the world that you are no longer interested in anything that disrupts your peace or disrespects your worth. It shows that you value your inner world more than the temporary satisfaction of arguing, explaining, or reacting. It shows that you are committed to protecting your energy. It shows that you are choosing strength over noise. It shows that you are choosing yourself. No contact protects your peace and power because it creates the space you need to reclaim control over your emotional world. It's a boundary that separates you from the chaos, confusion, and inconsistency that once drained your energy. When you decide to implement no contact, you are telling yourself that your well-being matters more than old attachments, familiar pain, or temporary comfort. You are choosing clarity over chaos, healing over hurt, and strength over weakness. No contact is not avoiding someone. It is choosing yourself so fully that you refuse to reopen wounds that took everything to close. It is the decision to step out of a cycle that once had a grip on your emotions, your confidence, and your sense of self. In that silence, your peace begins to rebuild itself because you are no longer exposing your heart to situations that destabilize you. You create room for your mind to breathe, for your emotions to align, and for your spirit to recover. When you remove yourself from someone's access, you are also removing their influence over your mood, your thoughts, and your self-worth. Peace cannot survive in an environment filled with manipulation, inconsistency, guilt-tripping, or emotional unpredictability. But when you go no contact, you remove the fuel that kept those patterns alive. Suddenly, there are no more arguments to react to, no more mind games to decipher, no more mixed signals to decode. The noise stops. The confusion ends. The emotional roller coaster loses its power because you are no longer playing the game. And in that quiet, your peace begins to grow. You start feeling lighter because your energy is no longer being hijacked. You begin thinking clearly because your mind is no longer fogged by emotional distress. Your heart starts healing because it is no longer being reopened by the same person who hurt you. No contact also protects your power by pulling you out of patterns that made you dependent on someone else for emotional validation. When someone has access to you, they have access to your triggers. They know how to pull you in with affection and push you away with distance. They know how to give you hope and then take it away. They know how to keep you emotionally attached through cycles of inconsistency. And whether they do this intentionally or unconsciously, the impact is the same. You lose power. You lose clarity. You lose yourself. But once you go no contact, the cycle breaks. They can no longer manipulate your emotions because there is no communication. They can no longer pull you back into old situations because you're not available. They can no longer control the pace of the connection because you're not participating in it anymore. In that silence, your emotional independence begins to rebuild itself. You start realizing that you do not need anyone to validate your worth. You do not need toxic affection to feel alive. You do not need breadcrumbs of attention to feel valued. You begin to take your power back piece by piece. No contact strengthens you because it forces you to sit with yourself. Instead of leaning on someone who hurt you for emotional comfort, you begin finding comfort within your own strength. Instead of seeking closure from someone who never gave it, you start giving closure to yourself. Instead of craving reassurance from someone who never offered consistency, you start discovering your own value without external approval. This process is not easy. There will be moments where the silence feels heavy, moments where memories hit you unexpectedly, moments where your emotions try to convince you to break your boundaries just to feel something familiar again. But each time you choose to stay silent, each time you resist reaching out, you build a new layer of strength. You teach yourself discipline. You teach yourself emotional resilience. You whisper to yourself, I deserve better than going backward. And slowly you transform. Your peace becomes stronger every time you avoid situations that once destabilized you. Instead of living in constant uncertainty, you begin living with emotional clarity. Instead of reacting to someone else's behavior, you begin responding to your own needs. Instead of wasting energy on someone who didn't appreciate you, you start investing that energy into yourself. Peace is not found by controlling someone else. It is found by controlling your own boundaries. And no contact is one of the strongest boundaries you will ever build. No contact also restores your power by ending the illusion of control that someone else had over your emotions. When you stop responding, the dynamic shifts. The balance changes. You are no longer the person who can be pushed and pulled at their convenience. You are no longer falling for promises that never turn into action. You are no longer trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment. Instead, you are standing in your own power. You are showing through silence that your standards have changed. You are demonstrating that your heart is no longer available to situations that break it. And that shift, quiet yet powerful, changes everything. Protecting your peace sometimes means disappointing others, especially those who are used to having easy access to your emotions. But that is part of growth. No contact gives you space to recognize who respects your boundaries and who only respected the access they had to your life. People who genuinely care about you will respect your need for distance. People who are only attached to the control they had will react negatively. But their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, your healing, and your future. No contact also helps you see people clearly. When the communication stops, their true character reveals itself. If they cared, they would change their behavior. If they valued you, they would respect your absence. If they truly wanted you in their life, they would reflect on what pushed you away instead of blaming you for creating space. Silence exposes truth. It reveals the difference between someone who loved the connection and someone who loved the control. And once you see the truth, you gain power because you no longer fall for illusions. Your peace becomes your priority as you learn that anyone who disturbs it does not deserve access to you. You begin guarding your energy more carefully. You begin choosing relationships that bring clarity instead of confusion. You begin recognizing red flags early. You begin demanding more from the people in your life, not through words, but through the standards you uphold. No contact is a powerful reset that shows you what you truly deserve and who truly deserves you. As you stay silent, you grow stronger emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You find out that you don't break without them. You rise. You don't fall apart in the silence, you rebuild. You don't lose yourself, you rediscover yourself. You begin to understand that peace is not something you ask for from others. Peace is something you create by removing yourself from anything that threatens it. And no contact is one of the strongest tools you have to protect that peace and reclaim that power. Breaking no contact reopens old wounds because every time you reach back to someone who hurt you, you are re-entering the emotional environment that damaged you in the first place. No contact exists for a reason. It is the space you create to let your heart, your mind, and your identity recover from a cycle that exhausted you. When you break it, even for a moment, you expose yourself to the same patterns, the same pain, the same triggers that once tore you apart. The wound may have begun to close, but reaching out rips it open again. It forces you to revisit feelings you were finally learning to release. It floods your system with familiar emotions, hope, fear, longing, confusion, and those emotions can pull you right back into a place you fought so hard to escape. Breaking no contact isn't just communication, it's re-traumatization, because the heart remembers every hurt more vividly than the mind tries to forget. When you go back into contact, even if just to say one sentence, one check-in, or one I miss you, you instantly return to the emotional imbalance that defined the relationship. You return to the version of yourself who accepted less than they deserved, who tried to make sense of mixed signals, who waited for change that never came. That version of you surfaces again because the brain is wired for patterns, and old emotional patterns quickly reignite once the connection is restored. You fall into the same rhythm, waiting for replies, overthinking small details, reading between the lines, hoping this time will be different. But it rarely is. Instead, breaking no contact places you right back into the loop of craving what harms you, seeking comfort from the source of your pain. And each time you return, the cycle becomes harder to break because familiarity can feel like safety even when it's the thing that destroys your peace. Old wounds reopen because the person you separated yourself from didn't suddenly become someone else. They didn't transform overnight. They didn't rewrite their behavior. And they didn't elevate themselves to match the love you gave, whatever pushed you to go. No contact is still there, waiting underneath the surface of the first hello. The moment you break silence, the unresolved trauma reappears. The unfinished arguments return. The hurtful patterns show up again. The emotional instability resumes. It may start calmly, wrapped in charm, nostalgia, and apologies, but soon the mask slips, and you're reminded exactly why you left. That reminder hurts even more the second time because now you're not just dealing with the original wound, you re-dealing with the self-betrayal of returning to it. Breaking no contact also damages your self-trust. You made a promise to protect yourself, to honor your pain, to walk away from what broke you. But when you give in to the urge to reach out, you feel like you're abandoning your own progress. That internal conflict becomes a deeper wound than anything the other person could inflict. You start doubting your strength. You start questioning your growth. You feel disappointed in yourself for slipping into old habits. And that disappointment can consume you because it makes you feel powerless when you fought so hard to regain your power. Every time you break no contact, your mind learns that your boundaries are flexible. Your heart learns that it can override your logic. Your emotions learn that they can control you. And that loss of internal authority keeps you trapped in the cycle longer than necessary. On top of that, breaking no contact reignites emotional dependency. You start relying again on someone who is inconsistent with their affection or unpredictable with their behavior. The craving for their attention resurfaces. The need for their validation comes back. The hope that this time it will work plants itself deeply. This dependency is the glue that keeps toxic connections alive. When you maintain no contact, you starve the dependency. When you break it, you feed it. And dependency grows quickly, especially when the relationship was built on emotional highs and lows. You begin chasing the highs again, forgetting how painful the lows were. But the lows always return, often more intense than before, because you're more emotionally fragile after breaking your own boundaries. Breaking no contact also invites manipulation back into your life. Someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries will use your return as confirmation that they still have access to you. They may become charming, apologetic, emotionally expressive, or suddenly attentive, not because they've changed, but because they want to regain control. Manipulative people thrive on the knowledge that you cannot fully detach. When you reach out, even once, you signal that you're still emotionally tied to them. That gives them the opportunity to repeat the same patterns, to reopen the same wounds, to trigger the same insecurities. And as soon as you are emotionally hooked again, the behavior that hurt you tends to return. The cycle restarts and the wound deepens. Another reason the wound reopens is because breaking no contact destroys your healing momentum. Healing requires time, space, and emotional distance. With every day of silence, your nervous system stabilizes. Your mind becomes clearer. Your heart becomes lighter. Your self-worth gradually rebuilds itself. You begin detaching from the identity you had in the relationship. You start reclaiming your energy. But the moment you break the silence, all the progress slows down or reverses. You emotionally regress to an earlier stage of healing. The grief you were processing resurfaces. The memories you were releasing. come back stronger. The feelings you were managing become overwhelming again. It's like reopening a wound that was scabbing over and watching it start bleeding all over again. And now healing becomes even harder because you have to recover not only from the original pain, but from the setback of returning to it. Breaking no contact also fuels self-blame. You start replaying the decision in your mind, asking yourself why you reached out, why you responded, why you gave someone who hurt you another opportunity. You criticize yourself for having a moment of vulnerability. You punish yourself emotionally for slipping, but this self-blame only deepens the wound. It keeps you stuck in shame instead of growth. It keeps you trapped in regret instead of recovery. That emotional spiral can be more damaging than the relationship itself because now you're fighting two battles: the pain of the past and the disappointment of the present. When you break no contact, your nervous system also becomes dysregulated again. You feel the same anxiety, the same adrenaline spikes, the same emotional confusion that you once lived with. You go back to checking your phone, overthinking responses, anticipating conflict, or hoping for affection. Your body remembers the stress, even if your heart remembers the good moments. And this physical stress is a wound of its own, one that deeply affects your peace, your health, and your emotional stability. Breaking no contact also delays the realization that the relationship is over. You remain emotionally attached to something that should no longer have power over you. You keep hope alive when hope is the thing that's hurting you. You cling to a version of the connection that never truly existed. And the longer you hold on to that illusion, the longer you postpone your healing, your growth, and your ability to move forward. The wound stays open because you never allow it the space to close. Every time you break no contact, you reinforce the bond that keeps you tied to someone who isn't meant for your future. You keep feeding an emotional attachment that destroys your peace. And the wound only deepens because you're reliving the pain instead of releasing it. Healing begins when you choose yourself, because the moment you stop prioritizing the wrong people, the wrong situations, and the wrong narratives, you finally create the space your heart needs to recover. Healing is not something that happens by accident. It's a conscious decision to shift your focus from the people who hurt you to the person who must rise from that hurt. When you choose yourself, you send a message to your mind, your emotions, and your soul that your well-being matters more than the comfort of familiarity. You begin to understand that healing does not start with closure from someone else. It starts with the courage to walk away, even without answers. Choosing yourself is the turning point where the pain stops controlling you and starts teaching you. Healing begins the moment you realize that your peace is more important than being understood by someone who never listened, more important than being chosen by someone who never valued you, and more important than holding on to a connection that kept breaking you. When you choose yourself, you shift from begging for love to giving yourself love. You shift from chasing validation to validating your own worth. You shift from waiting for someone to change to changing your own life. This shift awakens something inside you, a strength you didn't realize you had, a clarity you didn't know you were missing, and a self-respect that becomes the foundation of your emotional recovery. Choosing yourself forces you to face the truth you once avoided. It requires admitting that you stayed in situations where you weren't respected, where you weren't appreciated, where you weren't emotionally safe. It requires acknowledging the moments you ignored red flags, the times you accepted less than you deserved, and the ways you lost yourself trying to hold on to something that was harming you. This honesty may feel painful, but it is the first step toward real healing. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot grow while pretending you weren't hurt. You cannot move forward while still denying your own needs. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's the decision to give yourself the care you once gave away freely. Healing begins when you stop romanticizing the past and start recognizing the toll it took on you. You begin to see that the love you thought you were fighting for was often built on inconsistency, emotional highs and lows, and moments that felt good only because they were followed by moments that felt unbearable. You begin to see that the person you missed was also the person who contributed to your pain. When you choose yourself, you stop idealizing what could have been and start accepting what actually was. This acceptance frees you from the illusions that kept you stuck. It allows you to look at the situation through the eyes of wisdom instead of the eyes of attachment. Choosing yourself means deciding that your healing matters more than your history. It means stepping away from the cycle of repeating the same emotional experiences, hoping for different outcomes. It means telling yourself, I deserve to feel safe. I deserve to feel valued. I deserve to feel at peace. These statements become the foundation of your healing. They guide your decisions, your boundaries, your expectations, and your future relationships. The more you choose yourself, the more you build a life that reflects your self-worth instead of your old wounds. Healing begins when you stop looking for closure from the person who hurt you. Too many people delay their healing because they wait for apologies, explanations, or accountability that may never come. But choosing yourself means giving yourself the closure you were waiting for. It means realizing that closure doesn't come from someone else admitting they were wrong. It comes from you deciding that you deserve better going forward. It comes from you choosing peace over answers. It comes from you letting go of the need to understand what broke you and focusing instead on what will rebuild you. When you choose yourself, you reclaim the power that you once placed in someone else's hands. Healing begins when you set boundaries that protect your emotional space. Boundaries are acts of self-love. They tell the world that you will no longer tolerate anything that harms your mental or emotional stability. Setting boundaries means saying no to people who drain you, no to situations that destabilize you, no to connections that leave you feeling small. It means choosing your well-being over your fear of disappointing others. It means choosing your peace over your habit of people-pleasing. It means choosing your future over your attachment to the past. These boundaries begin healing the parts of you that were wounded by neglecting your needs for too long. Choosing yourself teaches you patience. Healing isn't linear. Some days you may feel strong, motivated, and clear. Other days you may feel sadness, nostalgia, or doubt. But choosing yourself again and again becomes your anchor. It reminds you that healing is not about perfection. It's about progress. Each day you honor your feelings without letting them control you, heal. Each day you resist going back to what broke you, you heal. Each day you choose to move forward instead of backward, you heal. Healing happens in the small decisions, the quiet moments, the private victories no one sees. Healing begins when you stop letting your past define your self-worth. Pain can distort the way you see yourself. It can convince you that you aren't enough, that you're difficult to love, that you have to earn affection, that you must prove your value. But choosing yourself interrupts that distortion. It reminds you that your worth is inherent, not conditional. It reminds you that you deserve respect simply because you exist. It reminds you that your value is not determined by who failed to appreciate you. The more you choose yourself, the more you begin to see yourself with compassion instead of criticism. Choosing yourself also opens the door to rediscovering who you are outside of pain. You reconnect with the parts of you that were overshadowed by emotional turmoil. You remember your strengths, your passions, your dreams, your purpose. You begin to enjoy your own company again. You start to feel comfortable in your own presence. You begin to rebuild your identity, not around someone else, but around yourself. Healing becomes transformative because you're creating a life that aligns with your soul rather than your wounds. Healing begins when you replace old habits with healthier choices. You stop engaging in emotional battles that drain you. You stop chasing people who don't reciprocate. You stop tolerating behavior that disturbs your inner peace. You start building routines that support your growth. You choose healthier environments, healthier relationships, healthier thoughts. You choose moments of reflection instead of reaction. You choose understanding instead of anger. You choose growth instead of stagnation. Every healthy choice you make becomes another brick in the foundation of your healing. Choosing yourself also brings emotional clarity. When you distance yourself from what hurt you, the confusion starts to fade. You begin to see things without the emotional fog. You understand your patterns more clearly. You recognize what you want and what you cannot allow again. That clarity becomes your guide, helping you navigate future relationships with wisdom instead of fear. You begin loving with awareness rather than desperation. You begin connecting with strength rather than insecurity. You begin choosing relationships based on mutual respect rather than emotional dependency. Healing begins when you understand that choosing yourself is not abandonment. It's alignment. It's aligning with your worth, your needs, your growth, your peace, and your future. It's choosing the version of you that you are becoming instead of the version of you that pain created. It's choosing transformation over comfort. It's choosing resilience over fear. Choosing yourself is the doorway through which healing enters your life. And every time you walk through that doorway, you rebuild yourself from the inside out. When you choose silence, you are not running away from life. You are creating the space where your future can finally breathe. The world is loud, people are loud, chaos is loud, but growth is quiet, strength is quiet, transformation is quiet. Nothing powerful emerges in noise, it is born in stillness. No contact is not just about blocking someone or disconnecting from a relationship. It is about clearing the inner space where your next chapter can unfold without interference, without old triggers, without the emotional static that used to drown out your own voice. Silence is the soil where change takes root, long before anyone can see it on the outside. In those quiet moments, you begin to access clarity. You begin to notice patterns you once tolerated. You begin to see what you need, what you deserve, and what you can no longer allow. That realization only happens when the noise is gone. Your future depends on what you allow into your mental and emotional environment. When you remove someone who has drained you, hurt you, confused you, or pulled you out of alignment, the silence that follows might feel uncomfortable at first, but it is not emptiness. It is preparation. It's the universe handing you a blank canvas and saying, now paint something better. In silence, your nervous system finally recalibrates. Your mind finally slows down. Your emotions finally stabilize. You begin to think clearly again. You begin to breathe again. You begin to feel like yourself again. And when you feel like yourself, you make decisions from strength instead of fear, from truth instead of insecurity. The space silence creates is not passive, it's powerful. Think of it as a reset button for your life. When you stop engaging with the source of your stress or heartache, your entire inner world begins to reorganize itself. Patterns break. Emotional loops weaken. Old habits lose their grip. You start noticing how much energy you used to spend trying to fix, explain, justify, or chase something that was never giving back equally. That awareness becomes a turning point. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Silence gives you that vision. It becomes the mirror that reflects everything you were avoiding when you were too busy talking, arguing, defending, or hoping. Your future thrives in silence because silence creates boundaries. It tells the world what you will and will not accept. It sends a message that your well-being is non-negotiable. It trains your mind to stop reacting and start responding. When you choose not to break no contact and you stay firm in that decision, your brain begins to detach from the old emotional patterns that kept you stuck. The space between you and the person or situation creates room for your identity to rebuild. You rediscover interests you abandoned. You regain confidence you forgot you had. You reconnect with dreams you put on hold. Your future needs that. It needs you to be whole, steady, and focused. Silence also strengthens your intuition. When the noise of drama is gone, you start hearing the quiet truth inside you. You notice red flags you ignored. You recognize the moments you betrayed your own standards. You see where you overgave, overextended, or underestimated your worth. That kind of clarity only shows up in silence. When your mind isn't occupied with reacting to someone else's behavior, it becomes free to think about what you want next. You begin to imagine a life that feels peaceful, grounded, and aligned with who you're becoming rather than who you were when you were hurting. And that imagination is not random. It's the blueprint of your future. Every version of you that succeeds, heals, grows, and flourishes begins in your imagination before it becomes reality. Silence gives you access to that creative space. It lets you envision a life where you're not controlled by someone else's moods, demands, or manipulation. It lets you see a life where you're not settling. It lets you feel what it's like to move forward without emotional chains. When that vision becomes clear, your future begins to form around it. The space created by silence also attracts better people, better opportunities, and better energy. When you stop allowing emotional chaos into your life, you naturally raise your standards. You start expecting more, not because you're arrogant, but because you've finally tasted peace and you're not willing to give it up again. That shift in energy changes everything around you. People treat you differently because you treat yourself differently. You choose differently because you think differently. You think differently because you finally created the silence needed to hear yourself. Growth doesn't happen in distraction, it happens in focus. And silence is the gateway to focus. The more silence you allow, the more you understand that not everything deserves your attention. Not every message needs a reply. Not every conflict needs your energy. Not every person deserves access to you. You begin to understand that your energy is a currency, and silence is the way you protect that currency. You no longer waste it on situations that drain you or relationships that cage you. Instead, you invest it into your future, your goals, your healing, your evolution. The space silence creates also reveals your resilience. When you stay silent in a moment where you once would have reacted, chased, explained, or begged for clarity, you teach yourself that you are stronger than your impulses. You are stronger than your wounds. You are stronger than the version of you that once settled for pain disguised as love. That kind of self-control rewires your identity. It builds discipline. It builds confidence. It builds inner power. And your future needs you powerful. The future you want, whether it's peace, success, love, stability, or purpose, cannot grow in a mind that is constantly pulled backward. It needs space. It needs stillness. It needs a clean emotional environment. Silence gives you that. It becomes the foundation for everything you want to build. Your greatest breakthroughs often happen in the quietest seasons of your life. Your next chapter begins the moment you stop trying to reopen the last one. Your future is already waiting, but it can only reach you in the space silence creates.